Thank you everyone for joining us today for our second Landlord Tenant Must Know event. We're happy to have Alistair back here again. This is Alistair Trent. He's a paralegal and he has a lot of knowledge, so it'd be a good idea to pay attention and hear what he has to say about what's been going on. And we will follow it up with a Q&A session after that. So yeah, if you want to start, Alistair, if you want to let us know about anything that, since COVID and everything started and anything you want to talk about.
You can slow and there's still a huge backlog and a lot of problems dealing with tenancy issues at the Landlord and Tenant Board. Theoretically, they've now started processing cases out of the new case management system that started last November. And needless to say, it's a 6-month delay. It's kind of gratuitous anyway, but at least they've started processing those cases. I don't know really what, not much to report on other than that, really.
Have there been any cases relative to, since the pandemic started, like cases that are relating to that, about any issues?
Well, what do you mean in relation to the pandemic?
Or just like any cases that have come out that are relevant to how things have changed since the pandemic or anything like that?
Well, I mean, there have been some cases. I mean, predominantly, I think a lot of cases that I'm familiar with are dealing with condominiums and condominium corporations, people, putting in place rules for masks and all of this type of stuff. And there's been a lot of support from the courts in favor of those type of restrictions. I had one in relation to a rental building where, again, obtained a favorable result against someone who just refused to wear a mask, this type of thing. But, case by case type of an analysis, really.
I think mostly it's related to like purchasing, closing, and then because of the COVID, and the tenants are having difficulty of, I guess, rearranging their places, like to find a new place to move out, and then the closing got delayed. I think that was one of not my own case, but.
Well, I mean, I've had some of those too, both in my real estate practice and legally. And I mean, the idea of delaying closing itself is somewhat controversial, because even if you leave, like a lot of what I see is that agents will leave the condition for vacant possession in the agreement of purchase and sale, and then have a provision where you have to serve the tenant with a notice that the buyer is going to move in. And then if they, nobody seems to put in the agreement of purchase and sell, okay, we're going to give the tenant this notice. What if they don't leave? But there's some support in authority from the courts to suggest that the mere fact that you have the provision that you're going to give the tenant the notice sort of obviates or vacates the warranty for vacant possession, because there's a implicit recognition that there's a tenant living in the unit, and the lawful, the law in Ontario is that they don't have to leave. So I would resist delaying closing on the basis that the tenant either didn't leave or whatever the case may be, and suggest that the buyer was obligated to close in any event. And
Is there a mix? If I talk, nobody's going to hear me. Well, I'm pretty loud. Okay, so I don't know. Can everyone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Should be able to.
My question has to do with tenants who have remained in locations not paying their rent, because the government, from what I understand, the government gave them an opportunity if they couldn't to not pay, and people, of course, exploited that opportunity. What's the story with that now? Given that I believe that when a period of grace or something is over, how do we get people back on track, or are we having? Because I've heard, I haven't had it myself, but I've heard there's people who are still in places 10, 12 months without paying rent.
Yeah, I've got one going on 23 months myself.
Really?
yeah.
Okay, and so those aren't getting prioritized at the board, nothing's happening, just too bad, so sad?
Yeah, pretty well. Look, I mean, I wish I could say otherwise, but the reality with all of these things is that the distribution of assistance and relief goes not to those who most need it or are most deserving, but rather those who are, know how to play the system. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation, unfortunately. So, I mean, as I say, I've got one thing where the people haven't paid rent in 18 months. And so ultimately got them in front of the court. They didn't show up because they had another court date on the same day. So we went to that court date because it was all video court, made sure it was over, told them to come to the next court. They didn't show up anyway, then appealed that on the basis that they didn't have a chance to come because of the other court date, even though that was right in the order saying that. And then on top of that, I've now appealed that further. They came to the appeal hearing and agreed to leave at the end of May, and then have now appealed further their own agreement. And it's just a matter of, you can push paper as long as you want, but it's a very disheartening thing to win. The other thing too is the government is just paying people's rent, not like everything else. It's like, oh, the guys who are working 3 jobs to try and meet their expenses and pay their rent. Nah, screw them. It's the person who just hasn't paid a nickel of rent in 8 months, but then goes to the city. Oh, you got to pay my rent or I'll be homeless.
So they go to the city for that? Or
yeah, well, in this case was the city.
Okay.
Yeah, it depends. There's any number of social agencies that exist just for the purpose,
Yeah. Is there a limit on what those social agencies are willing to pay for people's rent? Or
yeah, there's a limit on each one of them, but I mean, it depends on, it's just a matter of finding the right social agency.
and
right?
then the social agency, do they then pay the landlord direct, or do
Yeah.
they pay it to the tenant and the tenant just goes off and squanders it, or they pay
Well,
it to the landlord directly?
I've seen both, right?
Yes, okay.
But I mean, in these cases that are, the ones that I've been dealing with, mainly they'll pay it to the landlord directly.
Okay, well, that
But-
makes sense, yes.
But I mean, like we just had one where they ran up a bill for like $8,000, and then they was like, okay, well, the government's agreed to pay $5,000 of the rent, and the tenant has to pay 2 installments for the extra 3. So they get a check for $5,000 from the government. The tenant never pays a nickel. Out they go, and I mean,
But if they're out, that's at least in a better situation.
well, sure,
for
we
the
got
landlord, yeah.
$5,000, and
Right.
that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise,
Okay.
courtesy of the government, and the person was still homeless. So.
Right, okay.
Yeah. But all of this stuff, I mean, you just gotta wonder,
Well, speaking to that again, sort of, I don't know, what do we want to call them? Negligent tenants, or, I've seen that they're talking about a registry for crappy tenants. There's also a registry for crappy landlords, for people to, voice their dissatisfaction. Is there anything in the pipeline? Do you know of anything that's out there for crappy tenants?
well, again, I mean, I think I said the last time, there's a company called Rent Check Credit Bureau that I founded its legal department in 1990. And they used to actually go around collecting all the court records and kept a database of horrible tenants. And I think they're still in business. To what extent they still perform that function is another matter. You'd have to call them and find out. If I recall, it's worked there for like 4 years. 416-586-0900, I believe.
Yes.
But there's that, and I mean, certainly for the you can search online for landlords who have municipal violations and this type of thing, but and now, of course, all the information that's output by the tribunal has names and everything, where previously all of that was redacted. So you can certainly search on there and see, but that would only be since the information was started to be
Right. Which is
published
how
again.
long ago?
Oh, a year and a
Okay.
half, yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you. Kenny, does anybody have any questions in the chat?
No one says
No,
questions.
okay. Cool.
So, I asked one of my clients. It's
Okay,
you can, I guess.
okay.
Yeah,
People can't. Okay.
I have this client. I asked him to participate. So maybe he comes online or not. But so they are in the divorce case now, and they've been instructed that to not talk or communicate with each other at all in any way possible. And then the husband is the one who pays the check, and now husband moved out, and then the wife is there. So he calls and says he wants to terminate, and I said, well, same things as a joint tenancy. This is one contract, and both of you have to be agreed to terminate, or one want to take over, more than welcome, but we have to collect until both of you on the same page, right?
Mhm.
And now it's we try to reach the wife, and then she changed the number and so on, so, but somehow we find out, and we got connected through the management of the building, and she said it's still the lawyer doing the job. However, the husband has different story. So we stick with that one contract. It's not two contracts, so both of you are entitled. You have to pay. If you say that you're not gonna pay, it's gonna impact your credit, because the landlord is gonna come after you, because there is a one contract with both your names on it.
Yeah, at least for the term of the original lease, there are some things relating to the spouse of, I guess they're both on the lease, so that's not really relevant, they're both tenants. Yeah, at least for the term of the original lease, and then thereafter, it's questionable.
So if, in this case, we're just sorting, because it was beyond a year, and they extended for another year.
Yeah.
But again, we're willing to cooperate in any way possible, but because this is a different situation than the two partners that they are not, by law, they cannot communicate. No way. I mean, when we can CC them, but they cannot respond, have another name of to be there, right?
Yeah.
So it makes it that we have to communicate. So it's makes us our job are really tough, that what we have to listen to stories, but in this case we said just sort it out through your lawyer and then let us know. So how we do this one make it more easier actually to onward, but I think it's gonna get very complicated. One is not responding, another one says, I don't know, wait for the lawyer to sort it out. And I said, I pay the checks. I'm not gonna pay the checks any longer. I'm not leaving there.
Well, I mean, if nobody pays, then just terminate the lease for non-payment.
The wife said, I'm gonna stay here, but she didn't specifically say that. She said, still we're sorting out with the lawyer about that. I'm gonna let you know, and then every week and follow another weeks and another month so far.
Yeah, all of these things are kind of up in the air, because I mean, typically the notice of termination by one of joint tenants operates to terminate the tenancy as a whole. However, the Ontario courts have been reluctant to follow that. So, and then that's usually, as I say, I think we had some discussions about other student housing or whatever, where it was the same situation, because it's always the credit-worthy ones that go and leave the ones that you don't want, in there, and like that. But so I mean, again, it's a case-by-case thing. It's not really, there's no established rule. I mean, typically a common law, the termination of a joint tenancy by one of the joint tenants operates to terminate the tenancy as a whole, but that doesn't seem to hold much water.
So to simplify this, actually, it doesn't matter the case. It's one contract. You just follow exactly what you do in any other similar. It doesn't matter, husband and wife or three people on the lease, as long as one contract, same criteria applies.
Yeah. The fact that they're married doesn't have
There's
anything,
no
no,
exception.
no. It can in circumstances where, for example, you have the husband only rents a place and he lives there with or gets a wife or whatever, and they become spouses, and then the husband leaves, then the spouse can be deemed to be a tenant.
Yeah.
You know, regardless of the fact that they might not have been a signatory to the lease or anything like that.
So how we do that, if they one agree to take over and the other ones agree to leave and both agree, so what we do, we would put the amendment, change the name to that singular person?
Yeah, if that's what you want to do. And what benefit there would be in doing that is another question, but.
So the question needs to be a bit louder if, can you ask if everybody can hear it? Anybody else from there?
Is anyone on the online right now having difficulty hearing? If you could let me know in the chat or.
Because the question needs to be.
Just someone can, yeah, someone can just reply in the chat. Sounds very clear. Chat is working okay. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be an issue with the audio.
So the question doesn't need to be repeated.
No.
Or maybe you can do that just for the recording purpose.
I guess there's a couple questions that we can get into if nobody has questions yet on Zoom. If there is a repair that will require a couple days and the unit to be vacated, is the landlord responsible to find the accommodation for the tenant?
Well, I mean, what do you mean by the unit will need to be vacated? Like that would be quite an extreme repair, I would think.
Yeah, this question didn't specify, so I guess it's just a general.
Well, the landlord's obligated to keep the premises in a good state of repair and to do any repairs, and I would think that, yeah, they probably could be held liable to put the tenant, if it were of such a nature that the tenant couldn't possibly stay there, then, you know, that might be something for which you're
And is there a
liable.
limit to how much the landlord needs, like, so they would just have to accommodate for however long it is?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, it depends on the nature of the repair, there's very few repairs that you can't do with a tenant still living there.
I have another case that is a tenant does not have the internet nor phone. So where he didn't pay the bills for both and they disconnected. And we need to inform them of the showing. There is no other way we can communicate. So how do we go about it? What does the law say about that?
Well, you have to, first of all, to even be allowed to serve the notice for the showings by email, you have to have that in the tenancy agreement, which is in a standard form lease. And if you don't do that, then you would need to physically deliver the notice.
Well, we have communicated in the past via email and he responded. He actually signed the DocuSign because the landlord went there and asked, okay, we send you an email. Somehow he got access to his DocuSign and he signed it. But now we send a few showing requirement and the landlord telling us that that's what happened. He didn't pay the bill. So he doesn't have an email. Now, whenever he goes to the work, he may get retrieved, but we may have a showing or he may not go to the work every day. So in this case, we have
Deliver
to,
the physical notice.
sorry?
You have to deliver a physical notice.
Really,
eventually for each showing.
For each showing.
Yeah.
So I have a question about your question, Ron. Is this because the landlord is selling or is this because the tenant gave notice to move?
The tenant is giving a notice to move
The
out.
tenant gave notice to move?
Yes.
Okay.
And
Okay, then all you need to do is make reasonable attempts to notify the tenant if it's after the tenant gave notice that he's moving, as long as you're showing it to prospective tenants, not buyers.
oh yeah, I agreed. We are putting out for lease already. And he knows that he's moving out.
Okay, well, then you can enter with, all you need to do is make reasonable attempts to notify the tenant. So, I mean, whether those constitute reasonable attempts or not is you know, an
So
open
physically
request.
deliver the notice?
Well, I mean, yeah,
Or
that's
they
a way to be sure, absolutely.
Could I, as the listing realtor, take a notice to his door and says, we will schedule showings on these days between these hours, and then he's been given notice that those times, and then we try to schedule showings in those times.
Yeah, you could do that.
Okay, so we can sort of work with him,
You
but
have to make reasonable attempts to notify the tenant, so how, you know, as long as it's reasonable, then,
so
Yeah.
once they've given notice,
yeah, then as long as it's to show it to prospective tenants and not buyers.
Right,
it'll be fine.
okay,
We have sent exactly specific hours on the weekdays and 24 hours, the instructions there. It's just a matter of, is just, you never know. I mean, you don't want to enter the places where the person that actually, you know, it's dilemmas happen that, you know, in the situation, this is really hard error that the person has to be notified either or, right? You know, you don't know when the show is coming, and then what situation is inside the place that, you know.
Yeah, Yeah.
This is really tough one there. So
no questions online?
Not specifically on that one.
No, just in general, right?
There is a question on here that asks, can we ask management office to terminate access fobs if the tenant stays at a condo and does not pay rent?
no,
You can.
absolutely not.
Because,
Well, because there's a procedure for evicting people from properties if they don't pay rent, and you know, like, it's like, you know, shutting off their water or their heat, or the, you know, isn't one of the methods by which you do that. It would be viewed as a substantial interference with their reasonable enjoyment of the premises. In fact,
even if
it
they're
would-
not paying rent.
yeah, it would give them it would give them a defense to not paying the rent, and a reason, and, you know, would just prolong the matter, actually.
What are the methods to evict someone?
Well, if we're not paying the rent, you give them 14 days notice, 19 days if mailed, demanding the rent, and if they don't pay it by the time on the notice, then you apply to the board to throw them out.
By the sheriff.
Yeah,
Which still takes some time,
takes a huge amount of time.
yes, but
Yeah.
that's the process.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
process.
So
Right.
14 plus 90?
Well, yeah, I mean, basically, you're looking at between, I think, realistically, 4 to 6 months. But yeah, you give them 14 days notice, 19 if mailed, and then if they don't pay it by the date on the notice, then you can file and apply to the board to have them thrown out.
So 90 is in 3
1
months.
9,
19.
19 if you put the notice by mail, if 14 if you serve the notice by email, or if that's allowed by the lease, or you know, in one of the other methods that is permitted by the act. It's only if it's mailed, you have 5 days.
The first moment that they stop paying the rent.
The second day, yeah, like on the second of the month, yeah.
any more, no, I just
No
have another
questions in the
question.
chat.
Okay, so I have a question that has to do with rentals, obviously, but more in a rental building. Somebody broached this subject to me, so they're telling me that their building, or their experience of the building in the last couple of weeks has been, you know, last week there was only hot water, and this week there seems to be only cold water, and it's sort of intermittent. What is the landlord's responsibility to maintain services like that? And is there a responsibility for him to have more than just hot water available, or more than just cold water available?
Yeah, all of those things could be deemed to be a failure to maintain the property. You
So
know,
what would be the tenant's next step then?
well, I mean, either try and resolve it, or to apply to the board or call the city. I mean, dial 311, and
Mhm.
you know, that's another way to deal with it, frankly. Or you can apply to the board to get some, you know, like the majority of these things, I don't find that like, because the amount of money you're likely to get isn't, you know, I mean,
Yeah,
you know,
isn't worth it.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Mhm.
you know, you can,
Okay, but so something like water is a good option to go to the city.
yeah.
Okay, cool, thank you.
just I have a question. Simply, what is tenant responsibility in terms of the maintenance of the unit, like in terms of the light bulb, toilet issue, that sort of the things that, you know, normal wear and tear, that sort of the things. Is that the
The
tenant,
landlord's responsibility, all of it.
even the light bulb?
Yeah, even changing light bulbs.
Really, huh?
Yeah.
During the tenancy,
Yeah,
not just at the beginning.
no,
So can we insert the $100 first repair?
no.
No.
Can we put in a clause that says the tenant will maintain day-to-day maintenance of the unit, including light bulbs and washers and
You
things?
can put it in there, but I mean, in my view, it's if it's held to be that it falls under the general rubric of maintenance, and it's gonna be the landlord's responsibility, and whatever you put in the lease is not.
So really, we shouldn't talk about it at all and just put it in and hope people don't pay attention and change their own damn light bulbs, my God, yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
okay.
I guess going back to the water thing that Sean brought up, really, like, how long do these processes take if you do take it to the board or this?
Well, if you take it to the board, it can take 6 to 8 months. If you phone the city, if they find the water system to be defective, they'll order the landlord to repair
So
it
do you
usually
think-
within 30 days.
Do you know, like, and this is like, I feel like this is for a lot of things, like, how can some of these things be solved that it's fixed in a shorter period of time then?
Well, I mean, the city will order the landlord to fix it, and if they don't fix it by the date on the work order, then the city has a discretion to, go to criminal or provincial court with that. Which can lead to severe fines depending on what it is, like fire code violations are, in the $5,000-10,000, so there's serious motivation to fix it. With these other minor issues, I mean, most of the time, if somebody gets a work order from the city, they'll comply with the work order, because they don't want to, it's gonna cost them more money not to comply with the work order.
Come on, guys, you must have questions about rentals and leasing and, come on.
With the more and more buildings is tagged as a single family. It's supposed to be, but some enforcing, some not. More buildings we deal with, they want a single family.
What do you mean single?
Single family means
Oh.
no two friends. They can rent a place that it must be related, either
Right.
brother and immediate family, single family. That basically, and they have to prove that actually. The cousin does not consider as a single family.
Right,
So they will reject it point blank. And there are some landlords who are not aware of that, and they sign the contract and they just coming to inform the management that's what's it's happening for registration. Said, sorry, these two is not qualified. And
yeah,
their landlord has been in trouble on that one because there's an agreement in place. So in that terms, my question is about this. Of course, say same sex type of, they are not really legally, but they are in relation. This is considered in the law as the single family, like they are in relation. They said,
well, yeah, that's
boyfriend
exactly it.
gave-
You can get like, you get into problems under the human rights code and whatever from discriminating on the basis of, sexual, family status or sexual orientation, all of this type of thing, so.
they said boyfriend, girlfriend is okay. They consider as a single family.
Okay, well then what about boyfriend?
Yeah.
I would say that's.
As long as there's a two separate, they will consider if becomes similar, some of them probably, exactly, you have to go further through the.
Yeah, nobody wants to get taken to the human rights tribunal.
No,
because
I
it's
had a
a-
situation recently in a building that is limiting to single family. And that means a brother and sister, mother and child, a
Husband
married
and wife.
couple, or a same-sex couple is fine as well. They are a family. They moved into a one-bedroom suite. If they moved into a two-bedroom, there might be some discussion. But they moved into a one-bedroom suite and they are a couple. And they were moving from separate addresses to come together. And that flew, nobody questioned it when I said this is what's happening. And this is a building that's sticky about that, and so they are living there quite happily in this building, as a same-sex couple. And nobody's giving them a hard time because they're not roommates, they are a couple.
All of them, if they got trouble, they can say, well, we are boyfriends or we are girlfriends, then, it's considered that way. Try to say otherwise.
Well, I guess if you want to go that route, but maybe not, if you want to go that and make that declaration that you are a couple, then more power to you. Regardless.
Surprising, like, you're really not a boyfriend.
How do they prove that?
That's a good question. I got one at the moment where they're in a rental building where guys, like, this guy's just like, literally guy off the street comes, starts, you know, some guy let him move into his apartment to let him share the rent, the guy who was on the lease died. And so we're like, okay, you know, you gotta leave, and he's like, no, I'm the spouse of the other guy who was there,
Ah,
you
okay.
know, so.
Well, that's an interesting thing. So should that have been declared? Should his name have been added to a lease or some registry somewhere? Or too bad, so sad, he's there these days?
Well, no, I mean, he
Or
has
is there
to-
any
the
precedent for
onus is- the onus is on him to prove that he was a spouse, you know, and,
Okay,
so, you know.
Or there must be somewhere that, the document somewhere, like, you can.
well, but not if it would, what if, you know,
Well, no, he
tenant,
just, uh,
tenant A
not-
moves in. And then starts a relationship with B, and B moves in, and then A dies. And B is there.
Yeah.
So they can claim to, yeah, so they started a relationship, so are they in a relationship? And does that then follow and go to the spouse, partner, whatever?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, I guess it's the nature of the relationship too, that's, you know, instrumental, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay.
So it just sounds like there's nothing you can really do.
Oh, no, we're gonna throw him out, you know, like, it's up to him to prove that he was a spouse, and I doubt he'll be able to do so, but.
I mean, that situation, but like in the other situation where it's like a boyfriend and girlfriend wanting, or friends, and they just claim that, like, there's nothing you can really do, because you can't really, it's hard to, they still have to prove it, I guess,
To prove what?
to prove that they are together, so.
That they are a spouse.
So the rest of us-
Well, yeah, if they claim disposal, you know, benefits as a spouse, then it's for them to prove that they are.
Maybe on the tax paper, can you request that?
I don't know what the tax implications are of living with a same-sex partner that you haven't got a legal binding.
But wouldn't it be the same as if, say you live in common law, like for the.
I guess I'm not sure, I don't know if,
I don't know
you know,
how
our
to
government
Can
is
we do
straight.
that? Can we, if we really go, everything goes to the court, can we actually request that?
Well, you can, I mean, you know, like you can summons whatever documents you feel are necessary, but, or you can just ask the person, because they have to testify, right? So you cross-examine them, do you file taxes jointly, it's common. law.
Yes, if you're listed as a spouse on the, if you're listed as married and you have the same address, or, yeah, common law, like that would prove it. Did your partner have benefits, and were you receiving those benefits? Because that would show spousal
Yeah,
affiliations.
No, I mean, at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is because we're helping the tenants to move in, like we wanted to find a good tenant to move into a unit. So can anyone challenge us, like in case if they just say, oh, they're partners or they're.
Oh, they're not a couple? Is that what you're saying?
Building
So
can-
prior to them moving in.
Yeah, I mean, the building can reject for them to live there, right? Like, do they have to move out if the building said, okay, we don't.
But they would have to be approved by the building before they moved in, so,
I guess.
yeah, it has to be approved before. In the building I'm speaking of, and I will tell you the address later if you'd like it, we had to have a 2-week clause for the board to review this application, to approve it, and accept them as tenants.
This one
So-
on Bay Street?
I'm not, well, yes, it is, it's an
Yeah.
address on Bay Street.
I think I had got involved with one of those.
It's a rental apartments?
No, it is a condo
Condo.
building that does allow rentals with very specific rules.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, then I know the building. yes.
Okay, but again, I didn't wanna, talk about it out of school, that's, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Can we ask for the ID? Is that legal to ask for ID, a photo ID, and it's sent to us? Years ago, an agent rejected and said, by the law, you cannot ask an ID of the person there. I can show
Why
it to
wouldn't
you.
you be able to ask for an ID? I wanna know who I'm renting to.
Because
No.
I've had people that I'm sure are rejected because of the color of their skin on their driver's license.
Well, that gives rise to a separate type of
Okay,
complaint.
but yeah, but you can't prove that, you
Well,
can't prove it. I've
no,
got a-
but
I've got a
I mean, you don't
qualified-
need
yeah.
to prove it, because believe me, I've had clients who've been sued for that type of stuff.
Okay.
And there's absolutely no merit to it, but you just, you settle them anyway, because it's gonna cost a fortune to go through the human rights.
Well, you bring it, Clint, potential tenant who is qualified, who has a job, who has the income, who meets all the qualifications, and really the only thing that seemingly could be the problem is the color of their skin.
Right.
And I had it happen a year ago. And I
But it's
hate
so
it.
true.
I mean, or, no, I mean, you can just get a bad feeling from meeting somebody, you know, like that,
Sure,
you know, or I don't get along with this person, I'd sooner not do business with them. I mean,
okay, all right, well, yeah,
it's for
It's-
them to prove they were discriminated
it's just,
against.
it's so hard.
It's so true too. People looking at the photo and it's just point blank
Mhm.
reject.
Yeah,
Honestly, I mean, I've seen it there. You know, they see the photo. Basically, photo says thousand of the like words in that. So that's what they say. Is usually basically it's that some things that represent change your mentality before even you look at the document.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, yeah, all right.
Interesting.
Yeah, I felt like the ID things become a norm, because when I started real estate, I didn't have to submit any IDs. And then every time when the landlord asked me about the question, like that specific question, I will have to guess. And then, you know, imagine in Canada, there's a lot of like interracial families, for example, like they could have a clearly Chinese name, but they are not, you know, Chinese at all, I guess. And
They ain't white. It's really the problem. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's just, you can't prove anything really.
No, you can't, yeah.
That's what the problem is.
yeah, the look can be deceiving. Sometimes you saw like they look super clean and then they could be the worst
Ah,
tenants.
it's super clean. A photo's a photo's a photo's a photo, but it's not about their cleanliness. They are making a decision based on the information in front of them. And the information in front of them says, yes, they're qualified to pay. They have a job, they have all these things, but I don't like the color of their skin, because that's the only thing it can be. And it's unfortunate. I resist as long as possible in sending ID. I rarely, not will not, but rarely will send ID with an offer. I hate to say it, unless they're white.
well,
I'm not sending it unless they're white. Yeah, which is a horrible thing. Doesn't matter the ethnic of the landlord. I'm just not sending ID.
They can read the name.
Sometimes the name tells you, sometimes it doesn't. There's a lot of Steve Smiths out there that might be
True.
purple, orange, or green, you know. You can't tell somebody's color by their name necessarily. Yeah, so
Interesting, yeah, everybody has very different experience.
it's just a thing. It's a discussion. It's gonna go on forever, and it just won't change. So, next.
Lisa asked, can tenants plant vegetables on common area like the front yard and backyard without consent from the landlord? Landlord pays all the utilities during the lease period.
the vegetables are using utilities how?
I guess
Okay.
from the water,
Oh,
Good.
Is it a house or
Is
a
a
condo?
corporation?
The house.
it sounds like a house.
Okay.
well, I would say that if the conduct that they're engaging in substantially interferes with the reasonable enjoyment of the premises by the landlord, then that's a ground to take exception with it, and if it's not, it's not. So the first question is to ask, okay, well, why is it you've got something against vegetables, you know, like. You know, like what harm is it doing? Is really the.
Or maybe like there's more height, like the lightings for specific plants.
More what?
Water
No.
light.
But those are RSA's that no, the cannabis, you mean, that sort of things, it's a
Yeah.
difference.
I would, in my interpretation, if I was the landlord and this person wanted to make my garden look good, why not? I can't imagine there would be,
And
but,
usually plants are like vegetables.
well, if they're in the backyard, who cares?
Do they say front and?
Vegetables can be flowering and lovely too.
No, I got nothing against vegetables.
There you go. You don't eat them, but they're, but yeah.
Lisa also asked, besides first and last rent deposit, can landlords charge 1,000 for furniture deposit?
No, absolutely not.
Even if it's furnished,
Yes.
they can't charge a deposit for the furniture.
No, absolutely not.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So what is a reasonable deposit?
You
The
can't
reasonable
charge a
deposit is you can't charge one other than first and last month's rent.
Key deposit,
No?
key
What?
deposit.
Key deposit was,
A key deposit, as long
There's
as
a key
it's no
deposit.
more than the replacement cost of the actual
No
keys.
more.
Also, there's
Yeah,
another-
so that if you know, like the building says, I'll charge you $100 to get a new fob, then the deposit's $100. And if the actual cost to cut keys is $4.75, then that's a key deposit.
So what happens if you actually charge more than the actual cost?
Well, first of all, you end up in front of the landlord and tenant board and they order you to repay it. But I mean, they're all, for all of these things, like the financial cost is, and whatever is far more, like the process is far more problematic than the actual penalty. Like, I mean, for what, they get an extra $50, like,
So at the end of the day, they could just ask you to pay them back. And
Yeah.
so there's not gonna be any penalties.
no. Well, there could be, but I mean, you know, like, again, I've never seen it.
What could the penalty be for example? Like,
Well,
like,
they can fine you up to $25,000 or whatever, but you know, like I've just never seen that, right? Like they're just gonna fine someone 25 grand for wanting an extra, you know, he charged me $375 and he was only entitled to 2 1/4. Well,
I've seen people ask for key deposits up to $500, and
Yeah,
I
that's
change it,
not-
I change it.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
not kosher at all.
And there's no, you can't, so no additional deposits, so no cleaning deposit,
No,
no furniture deposit,
no,
no nothing,
no,
okay.
no deposit. The only security deposit the landlord can charge is a deposit equal to 1 month's rent.
And that's the last month's rent
Yeah.
ostensibly, okay.
Yeah, exactly. It has to be applied to the last rental period. Now, there have been cases where people have volunteered to pay more money, like, and whatever. and
As additional,
towards
as an additional deposit, because they don't have, they're not
Credit
Canadian or they
worthy or-
don't have.
Yeah, which again,
okay.
which is, if you're doing that, I mean, like, just, you know, sign me up for a human rights complaint on that one, right? Like, you know, I just charged them an extra 10,000 because they're from, you know,
Wish
wherever.
Kabibble.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like, do you-
What if somebody volunteers?
Well, yeah, you can do that. I mean, and I've had courts have upheld that, but it has to be, and you know, voluntarily. What's the word of
we discussed
voluntary? I
this
mean,
the
it's like,
last
I tell
time.
you, you're gonna give it to me, or I'm not gonna rent you the
If it's
apartment.
not
okay,
extorted, yeah,
Yeah, like, and then all of that will end up being like, you know, will come out, like, it's like, you know, oh no, their agent suggested it, we said, yeah, he suggested it, because you told them there was no way in hell you were gonna give them the apartment unless they came up with it.
okay, so I've never had it where I've had it where realtors have suggested that an additional deposit would be appealing to the landlord. But generally, when I've done leases where I have offered, the tenant seems to be well aware that, and I spell it out in the clause, so does, if I say, you know, because the tenant is new to Canada and understands that it's a challenge isn't the word, but it's a, you know, challenge and for the landlord to take on somebody new, blah, 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 blah. The tenant is voluntarily offering an additional deposit to cover these months, should they remain in good standing. I mean, I cover it very, very extensively.
Yeah,
And acknowledge that it is hard for a landlord to look at somebody who's new to the country and wants to rent their place. Well, but I've had people not want to take tenants from Ottawa because they hadn't lived in Toronto before, so landlords are weird people.
yeah.
So does that cover it? Right? Do I have them sign something before? Does my clause, if I write it out, is?
Yeah, if it's voluntary, if it's a truly
Yeah.
voluntary and offer of this to induce somebody, the landlord,
Mhm.
to enter into a tenancy agreement, generally speaking, you should be fine.
Okay.
In my view, not, but there have been court cases that have held that's permissible.
Okay.
And I mean, the whole thing too is that, like, leaving aside the entire thing, it's like, you know, I know the landlord's gonna engage in discriminatory conduct, so I'm gonna pay them the money here to sort of feed into that whole narrative. You know, but
Right, and I understand that it's not in a, you know, in an ideal world, that we wanna do that, but,
you know, in an ideal
Yeah.
world, you'd be like Florida, where you give them 3 days notice and the sheriff comes with a gun.
there you go.
You know, like-
Cause I have somebody I got a call from today who has recently arrived in Canada. They need a place, they're staying in a hotel right now, they want a place relatively quickly. They have a an online gig that they're doing and have been doing for a couple of years in the UK. They were living in the UK and now they've come to Canada.
Yeah.
They're looking for local employment. They have a local guarantor. And I am not going to offer additional money unless we really need to. But I'm gonna, pull the whole, we've got this. And hopefully I don't have to do an additional deposit. The landlords will just see the value in somebody who has come to Canada, wants to stay here and has an income right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
okay.
hope.
We hope, yes.
Yeah.
Some landlords are unreasonable,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, thank you.
In terms of the key deposit, do you have to pay interest on the key deposit too?
I mean, technically, no, but I mean, like, it's gonna be at such a negligible amount anyway. I mean, I think the interest rate is the same as the rent increase rate, which is like 1%. So, like,
It'll be 25 cents on a key deposit.
I know, but it's sometimes you have no idea. These two, one, they're not
I-
looking at the business, the dollar amount. I don't have to pay, or no, you have to pay. It's just the principal things that they come between them.
So my clause
Just,
for a key deposit, my clause, and I don't know whether it's better than anything, but my clause for a key deposit says, they're gonna pay X dollars for 2 sets of keys. And that deposit will be returned when all keys are returned to the landlord or their agent, without interest or deduction.
Yeah, but you say on your clause,
I
but what does
do.
the law say? That's the difference.
I don't know, because not everybody has a key deposit, so is there even a law about it?
yeah, there is the key deposit, but
It's still a
the interest
deposit.
is payable on a last month's rent deposit, not.
Okay, so it's gonna be 1% on $250 over a year, how much money is that? 2.5 cents?
Those are expensive keys.
Yeah, those are, well, but maybe they were 2 sets,
$500 and they're there for 3-4 years.
but how much is that?
No, not a matter of.
Yeah, no, but okay, but yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's negligible.
We have had like for $10, the landlord and tenants, they're just bugging each other for that.
oh, I know, because people are petty and people are stupid.
So,
yeah.
and then interest on the deposit, last one deposit, you have to clear it every year.
Well, you have to what?
You have to,
You have to pay
it
it
out
every year.
every year.
Well, no, I mean, generally speaking, it's the same as the rent increase amount, so you
Yes.
just retain it and apply it to the last month's rent account. And
Add on to them because
yeah,
twice.
exactly, so that if the rent goes up from, whatever, $2,500 to $2,569, then you just keep the extra $69, because it'll be the same as the rent increase amount. And you just apply that, so now you're holding $2,569 as a rent deposit.
Oh, I
And
see.
keep it rolling in that regard, so that you don't, because that's why the whole thing is screwed up, so that the rent deposit interest is the same as the rent increase, and that way it can be kept consistent as it goes along.
So it's advisable to always do the rent increase anyway, so to
Yeah,
keep up.
Yes.
Because if you don't do it 1 year, then that
You owe
interest
money,
generate,
yeah.
exactly, that's how.
but I mean, in reality, none of it's that, because if you end up going before the board or they don't pay the rent or whatever, the board will automatically calculate out the interest and,
Deduct.
add it to the last month's rent deposit account, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, there was one question there?
Oh,
Yeah, there's just one
Oh,
question
yeah.
here. If the tenant has left, terrible mess, the unit's terrible and messy, and landlord's charged for cleanup.
Yeah, well, the tenants were responsible for ordinary cleanliness and whatever, and now there's a provision where you can apply to the board to get the out-of-pocket costs incurred as a result of the tenant's breach of obligations. So, yeah, I mean, but again, like the advisability of doing that, the collective cleaning fee is probably not that good.
And I guess the one thing that you were saying, Chanel, I was just curious, like, you're trying to propose an offer to a landlord without additional rent.
always, that's always my
Always,
goal, yeah.
But if they have another offer, how do the landlord, how do you know if the landlord's gonna be more like, I feel like most of the time they would choose the person who's gonna be able to pay up front, right?
Maybe, maybe not, you
But
never
it
know.
just depends on-
Some landlords aren't interested in additional deposits, they just want people with a job.
Mhm.
Yeah, they just want people with a job that they know they're gonna get. They're not interested in additional deposit. They don't care about that. They wanna know they're going to be paying over the long term. There's no advantage to them for that. And maybe, like, if I did that, I'd be bad. I'd spend the damn money and then I wouldn't have any money to pay the rent or to pay my bill because I would have spent the advanced money because I'm an idiot that way.
And why
So,
why do you think landlords do that then? Or like, will
do-
take that kind of
well,
offer?
Oh, well, I have no idea. I have no,
I guess just in the sense that like, yeah,
But there's a large group of tenants in Toronto actually from international, especially students, that they usually are kind of not being picked.
they're not being
picked.
chosen, yeah.
Chosen
Yeah.
by the, yeah.
Yeah,
because of the
often, well, okay,
competition.
so
I guess it's a lot.
if I was in a good position as a landlord and somebody gave me a big chunk of change up front, I might find a way to invest it to have that money give me a better return than the return I'm getting. But it would have to be $20,000 minimum. And some people will prepay the year and that works for some people, not for others. You never know what a landlord's thinking, and because we as realtors don't actually speak to the landlord, it's often the realtor you have to get past. And if the realtor doesn't see the value, or doesn't like your tenant, or doesn't like the color of the sky that day, you're not getting anywhere, so it doesn't matter. It's not always the landlord, it's sometimes the realtor that doesn't see the value in it. We have to get past that. We don't speak directly to the landlord.
Cause it's like we are the guardians and then.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Probably
yeah.
have more to say on the tenants than the landlord himself, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so there we go.
So again, like, dealing with the real experience rental agents, it really helps because we've seen a lot of real deals, like real offers. Especially with Remax, the condos like downtown, like we really like list a lot of the properties and receive so many offers.
It just depends, yeah, it just depends. There's so many variables, Kenny, just so many variables that, yeah, there's never any logic to it. It is not logical.
So
Okay, are we-
closing, yeah.
Yeah,
Are
well,
we
I'm gonna
wrapping
wait
up?
for.
Okay.
Are you gonna wait for him to come back?
Any questions?
Are we gonna sing-
Everybody show your face. Maybe
Yeah,
we can
are
take
we
a
gonna
quick
sing the
photo.
Jeopardy theme song or anything before we sign off?
Yeah, so you wanna make an announcement for next time? It's gonna be June 29th, the last Wednesday of each month, right?
Mhm.
The same.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for June 29th, we are going to have another event with Alistair, but I think we're also going to try to focus it on his expertise of renting or buying outside of Ontario.
Ooh,
And I
what
feel
a
like
great
I'll,
idea.
Oh, that's gonna be a very interesting topic, I'm
Mhm.
sure, yeah. Is it especially in the States or just anywhere in Canada?
Oh, well, I mean, I have some experience in Alberta, but I mainly worked in Florida and Belize and Mexico.
Ooh, Belize, I like Belize. Yeah. Sorry.
Wow, that's something to look forward to on June
Yes, what a great
29th.
opportunity, yes.
Yeah, so again, that's the last Wednesday of each month
Okay,
at 6:30, so we
Yeah.
should see everybody again, hopefully in person. If,
All right.
can you hear Joyce? Can people hear her?
Yeah, I don't think we asked in the chat earlier. Everyone did something.
Okay, cool, I'm just checking.
I know.
It's just-
I'm doing it, thank you.
Oh, you,
I'm
okay,
doing it for the recording.
All right, fine,
So
okay.
hopefully we can make a good,
all right,
little teaser for tonight.
okay.
Yeah.
All right,
And potentially we can have an after party.
yes, because we're coming up to the,
And today we're going to do a condo tour for the Sounds unit, if you are interested.
oh yeah, you're gonna go see,
Tendo,
okay?
yeah, I booked, if anybody
We're gonna go
wants to
see
go
something?
see. Yeah, we can check out like where we're gonna do it next month.
Okay, so after the event, we're gonna go see a condo too, that's kind of cool. Nice, I like that idea, so people, come on down, come on down. The sushi is tasty, come on
Yeah,
down.
actually, I didn't record that. Can we do that again?
Come on down, the sushi is tasty, we'd love to see you in person, come on down.
45 Harbour Square,
Yes,
next month, June 29th.
okay,
Yeah.
But yeah, we'd just like to thank you again, Alistair.
Oh,
for
my
taking the
pleasure.
time and-
Anytime.
Yeah, and I guess we were going to do a little lucky spin for a $25 gift card for everyone
Woo-hoo.
who's here today.
Okay, are we gonna do that now or
We're
when we're
going to,
after we log off?
We're gonna do that right now.
Right now, okay.
So
Where's the
I'm not
lucky
sure if I
spin
spoke
lady?
your name wrong.
That's okay.
SAWNA.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, I will just spin it for everyone who is.
You're doing a spin, oh my gosh, it's on there, how cool is that? Okay.
So we're doing it on the screen, but I don't think anyone can see, but the winner is
Jennifer.
Jennifer.
Who's
Jennifer?
Congratulations.
Jennifer, yay,
Jennifer, can we see
Jennifer.
you, Jennifer?
Do we know Jennifer?
Jennifer's on the
I think
Zoom.
she's also
Okay.
getting her license, so hopefully.
Ah, she's new,
Yeah,
yay!
yes, sir.
Welcome, Jennifer,
Yeah.
okay, yay, okay.
Congrats, Jennifer. We will stay in touch with you and get you the gift card. Yeah, and then just here is the little item that we will present to you for this one for.
Oh,
Yes,
all right, thank you very much.
Oh, that's one of my favorite stores.
But yeah, thanks again, Alistair, and we hope to see everyone
Yay.
next month and.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, not in person, we look forward.
Thank you, everyone,
It's
for
a
joining
lot of
us.
fun.
Thank you all. Have a
Thanks for
great night.
putting up with my crazy voice.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you so
yay.
much.
Thanks, Alex.